What time is it now? Yeah, so we gave 5 minutes, so I'm sure people will join. So let's see. Yeah, and yeah, I'll do the admin work. So yeah, let's start. That's great.
Okay, so morning everyone. Before Thomas goes on with the sort of welcome speech, I hope you're all well, and thank you for taking the time to join our workshop today. So for UKMSW, this is a huge event because it holds a lot of significance. It's our first national event. So, you know, we're very happy for you guys to be here, and we look forward for this session as well, and for our guest speakers. So before we go ahead with the session, I do want to run through some Zoom etiquette. So firstly, if you're not speaking, if you could just please mute your microphone just to avoid any background noise or distractions. If you could also ensure that when you've joined into the Zoom session, to ensure that you have an identifiable name. So for example, rather than putting, I don't know, Samson 60 or something like that, just put your name, just so we can identify you as well. And if you could just turn on your videos if possible, so just to maximize sort of that participation and involvement as well. We will be having a Q&A session later, so if you do have questions, do put it in the chat. We will try to answer them, but do be aware that we do have a question and answer session in later, so you can put as many questions in there as well. So as Sheena said, the session will be recorded, so if you don't want to be a part of that, do sort of feel free to turn off your videos as well. Okay, so if I could pass it on to our chairperson, Thomas Joseph, to provide our welcome speech.
Thank you, Araminta. Good morning, although it is good afternoon where I am currently. I just have an apology to start with because where I am, the network is not really excellent. So there could be a bit of a lag. I'm delighted to see so many people have come to participate in this seminar. First of all, I would like to commend the hard work of our executive committee, especially Biju, for all the efforts in arranging this program. I'm well aware it was not an easy task, and there has been a lot of efforts that has gone behind this. After this executive committee has taken over in January 2023, it was our desire to do more, and this is an effort towards that goal. The topic selected for this first national seminar will help us to discuss and reflect on the opportunities and challenges for the Black and ethnic minority social workers in UK. Let us focus on both the opportunities as well as the challenges, and not just the challenges alone. I'm sure we have a wonderful panel of speakers who have wealth of knowledge to discuss this with us. Just also to update that after this committee has taken office, we have also now completed many training programs inviting external partners, as well as giving opportunity to many of our own members to present different topics related to social work in UK. We have developed a working relationship with Social Work England, BASW, leaders in social work and academic field. UKMSW is now one of the organizations invited or consulted by some of these important agencies on social work practice in UK. We feel very proud of these achievements. However, we do not want to stop there. We want to develop further and bring a lot of opportunities to our members. I wish all the panelists and participants the very best, and I hope this will help us to reflect further on the opportunities and as well as the challenges and how we can overcome these challenges. And just a final play, after this session, we have a short meeting for the members. So if I could ask all the members to stay back after the meeting. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you, Thomas. So as Thomas really nicely said it, we have some very special and important key guests who will be presenting and partaking in our national workshop today. So we have Dr. George Palattiyil. He is the head of social work at the University of Edinburgh and a senior research associate at the University of Johannesburg, South Africa. His teaching and research interests are in the area of forced migration, refugees, asylum seekers, human rights, individuals affected by HIV/AIDS, and older people. Much of his research have focused on the sort of social dimensions of refugee health in Scotland, Uganda, Jordan, and Bangladesh. He is the founding governor of the Global Refugee Health Research Network, which aims to promote collaborative research and knowledge exchange activities. He has published widely in international journals and co-edited Social Work in a Global Context, Issues and Challenges, and is currently co-editing a Practice Social Work in Action, a special issue on a global agenda for social work and social development. He's also Senior Fellow of the UK's Higher Education Academy. So welcome, Dr. George. We also have Mrs. Amina Akhtar. Amina is the head of Equality, Diversion and Inclusion at Social Work England. She works to raise the profile of equality, diversity and inclusion across Social Work England, providing advice, support and constructive challenge. She's responsible for developing and implementing Social Work England's equality, diversity and inclusion strategy, plans and policies, having already played sort of a key part in championing equality, diversity and inclusion in her role as regional engagement lead for Yorkshire and the Humber. So Amina qualified as a social worker in 2008, completed an MA in integrated practice in 2017, and gained a postgraduate certificate in organisation development this year. Amina is a certified coach and trainer on top of that, and has worked in several statutory, educational, community, voluntary and health settings. She also supports various charities, organisations operationally, and is on several boards where she is instrumental in driving strategic and cultural change. So welcome, Amina. We have then Dr. David Jones. So Dr. David Jones qualified as a social worker in 1974 and has extensive international, national and local government, NGO and private sector experience. He is a board member of the Commonwealth Organisation for Social Work, represents civil society on the Commonwealth Advisory Committee on Health, and is a trustee of children and families across the Federation of Social Workers and global coordinator of the Global Agenda for Social Work and Social Development. He has published and spoken extensively on social work practice and management in the UK and overseas. We then have Dr. Yohai Hakak, who've also kindly joined us today. He is a senior lecturer in social work and the MSc Social Work Programme Lead at Brunel University, London. Yohai studied and practiced social work in Israel and the US. He moved to the UK in 2007 and has since held academic positions at the LSE, University of Portsmouth and Brunel University, London. So while Yohai's background is in mental health social work, his research covers a wide range of areas, including parenting, religious identities, youth, and migration. And finally, we have Mrs. Priya David. Priya has 26 years of social work experience internationally and in the UK, 16 of them in leadership and management of varied children and families social work teams. She's experienced in effective operational and strategic management, driving sustained improvement work of various services within children's services. She's currently involved in actively promoting transformational social work practice as a quality assurance lead, supporting Ofsted preparation, firming up on management, oversight and grip throughout the child's journey. Priya has been an international committee member of BASW from 2019 and has advocated for the huge cohort of Diaspora social workers here in the UK, leading to the sort of international committee and BASW AGM passing sort of the motion to support overseas social workers here in the UK. She's played a key role in establishing the special interest group and currently is the co-chair of Diaspora Social Work Special Interest Group. She's also a researcher looking at sort of glass ceiling faced by Black and Asian leaders here in the UK. Is passionate about advocating and supporting Diaspora social workers' issues here in the UK, and is keen that the sort of contribution of Diaspora social workers are recognised, celebrated and promoted, so the principles of social work of equal opportunities and attitudes to discriminatory practice becomes a reality. So welcome to you all, and we do look forward to hearing from you. So I'll now be handing over the session to Dr. George, who will be moderating our event. So over to you.
Thank you, Araminda. That was really an real overview and introduction. Thanks for inviting me to chair and moderate the session. You have put together a really fascinating seminar together with really interesting topics to cover. When Biju contacted me, I was intrigued by the conversation, and I was for a moment reflecting back on the time when I came here some 25 years ago to do my PhD, and being in Scotland, there were very few social workers who you could call like BAME social workers, and perhaps none from the Indian subcontinent for that matter. At least I didn't know anyone for that matter. So it was quite an interesting time in those days, and when you talk about the opportunities and challenges that social workers from minoritized background faced or experienced, there was no sort of space for that, and you just had to hit the ground running as a regular established colleague from here for that matter. So it is very heartening to really see the progress and development that you have put together to bring people together and to really create a space for people to come together and share experiences, challenges, opportunities, strengths, and also what we can do collectively to shape some of the policy conversations to create a better working environment for that. And these are some of the opportunities that would really allow that co-production of policies and practices in such a way that there is better, enabling environment for everybody to do their best as social workers, managers, senior managers and practitioners and academics and whatnot. So I'm really honored to be invited to this event, and I think, as I said, you have a really interesting program that you have put together with David giving the keynote address, followed by Yohai and Priya talking about the the work that they have been doing, and personal reflection from some of the students as well as practitioners who are based here. And so overall, I hope their day is going to be really interesting and provides a lot of insights as to the opportunities that we have, some of the challenges we face here, and how can we really together support each other also in collaboration with and work together with the Social Work England. Amina is here, and we also have a Social Work England's counterpart in Scotland called Scottish Social Services Council, and for the rest of the UK as well, different parts of the UK, they have their own regulatory authority. And it's important that there is some engagement between practice and policy and regulatory authority in such a way that social work is global. It's not just bound within a sort of narrow statutory context, and how can we really support each other in understanding that, although we may have done our qualification from elsewhere, there is still, learning to be had, contribution to be made. And I truly believe in the importance of cross-cultural learning at a time when we are all, migrants traveling through this world. We would come across people who come from our background, similar, culturally different background, and therefore, it's important that, contribution from different minoritized social workers are respected, appreciated, and promoted. So that's the sort of context I want to sort of set the scene for. And I would now like to invite Amina Akhtar, who is here from Social Work England, who is championing the equality, diversity, and inclusion agenda. And I think when I came here many years ago, one of the things that we were talking about was it was soon after the unfortunate death of Stephen Lawrence. Those of us who have been here long enough to know what is the background and things like that, I'm sure David knows much more than I would know about it. And any social worker you meet, any organizational context you go to, there was this conversation about, oh, we need to sort of train people around anti-racist practice. Okay, there was a lot of training happening at that time. And then over time, that got sort of less focused and replaced by anti-oppressive practice. And over time, that also got replaced by a sense of multiculturalism and whatnot. And then the notion of anti-racism, equality, diversity, inclusion all went away in some respect or the other. It became more in theory, more in policy context, rather than in actual pragmatic, implementation of these key issues. And then came the unfortunate, the death of George Floyd, and then the resurgence of Black Lives Matter movement, and everybody started talking about, okay, let's talk about anti-racist practice, decolonizing the curriculum and whatnot. So I think across the United Kingdom and perhaps in different parts of the world, the notion of decolonizing the curriculum is driving is something that is driving all of us, particularly in the context of social work, because that's the area we are in. And what does it really mean what does it really mean for those of us who are really walking in the shoes of that decolonizing the curriculum, who are affected by, who are the subject of it? And also being in the academia, I know there is already a conversation about decolonizing the decolonizing curriculum agenda as well, okay? And I think organizations like regulatory authorities like Social Work England taking this agenda forward is absolutely commendable. So on behalf of the organizing committee and the BAME Social Workers group in the United Kingdom, I really would like to extend a warm welcome to Amina to reflect on her work in the area of EDI and how she is promoting EDI both within the Social Work England as well as what is more widely within the United Kingdom. Over to you, Amina.
Thank you. I'm now going to attempt my greatest challenge, which is always the screen share. Technology, when it works, is great, but sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge. So I'm hoping. And also, I would like to continue to see you as well. So I'm hoping. Can you see my screen?
Not
you're
not yet.
No, not yet.
Okay, bear with me. I'm trying to do it so I can see you and the share. So we'll go with that. Has that worked?
Yep.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So that's always helpful. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. I've already had a very thorough introduction, so I won't spend too long on this slide, but just to say that I'm really pleased to join you. And I've been in this role for just over 2 years. And I suppose just my greatest reflection on it is that in some ways we've made some significant progress, but also the recognition that there is so much to do. And as George has already said, there is an evolving landscape, often particularly in relation to EDI or anti-oppressive practice or anti-racist practice, whatever we want to focus on. So I think it's really important to recognise how the way we think about EDI changes and also what it actually ultimately means. So I will hopefully spend a little bit of time thinking about that in the next couple of slides. So I'm hoping that I can move it on easily. I'm less familiar with Zoom than I am with Teams, so I'm hoping it will work smoothly as it can. So I thought it'd just be helpful to think a little bit about what Social Work England do. We've been in operation since 2019, so still relatively young for a regulator, and we are the specialist regulator for around 100,000 social workers. We set the professional standards, which George alluded to earlier, and we also set the education and training standards. Now, I haven't focused quite as much on that, George, in today's presentation, but I will touch on it as we go through, because you raised some really interesting points. We also are responsible for handling concerns about social workers' fitness to practice. And I will spend a little bit more time on that today, given that we recently published some diversity data around our fitness to practice processes and the learning that we've had from that over the last few years. We also require social workers to record CPD. So we're currently in our renewal period at the moment. And encouraging people to continue to renew and update their CPD. And we also approve post-qualifying courses as well. So as I say, I think what would just be useful, particularly given what George said earlier about language within this space, just to think a little bit more about what we mean. And I think language is important, but it's often changing. And I think it's more about what it means to us and how we ultimately apply it. And again, I think George was speaking to that when he talked about actually it's not just about systemic applications, but it's also about the immediate application for practitioners as well. So it's really important for us to recognise the micro as well as the macro. So equality, and again, often when we talk about equality, we also mean equity in this space. So looking at how we treat people fairly, with dignity and with respect, but also making sure that we are challenging discrimination and looking at how we remove barriers and ensuring that everybody has the opportunity to be able to achieve their desired outcomes. Diversity is very much about how we celebrate difference and really thinking about the different qualities that people bring. And again, George, you talked about the importance of recognising learning from across different cultures. And I think that is really important here. And inclusion is also about how we ensure access and ensure that people feel valued for what they bring. And I think it's really important that we're able to do that. And ultimately, it's about participation as well. So Social Work England have spent a long time thinking about how we embed co-production within our work. And for me, equality, diversity and inclusion and co-production are two sides of the same coin. I think to co-produce means that we can really think about how we make what we're doing meaningful to the people that we're serving, and we really attempt to do that in all that we do. So I'll touch on these concepts throughout the presentation. So I thought it'd be helpful just in terms of context and where Social Work England is at in the broader strategy and business plan. So we published our strategy earlier this year, And the three areas that we're focusing on are prevention and impact, regulation and protection, and then delivery and improvement. And we ultimately see equality, diversity and inclusion and co-production as our guiding principles. So I've highlighted the business plan for this current year and the areas that we're looking at. So I won't spend too long on it because it is on our website. But I just thought it was helpful in terms of thinking about where we're prioritising over the course of the year. And I'll focus largely on our EDI priorities. So we've got 6 EDI priorities this year. And ultimately, the objectives are taken from our strategy, because what we wanted to do is ensure that EDI objectives are the same as the organisational objectives rather than additional objectives. That ensures that everything that we're doing is always looked at through an equality, diversity and inclusion lens. So the 3 objectives that I've highlighted here relate to data and insight, which is one of the areas I'll spotlight in today's presentation. Objective 2 is about social work students and ensuring that that the education that they receive is comprehensive and consistent. And I wasn't going to spend very long on here, as I said, but I'll just say a couple of things in reflection on what George said earlier. That education is one of the areas that we've put a real focus on. And at the moment, we've established an education and training advisory forum, and we're working with people across the sector to really think about how we ensure that we provide a supportive and inclusive learning environment. That group includes students and people with lived experience, as well as academics. And that is very much about co-production. And at the moment, we are creating some readiness to practice guidance, and we've talked quite a lot about what that should include. We had a consultation around that, and we really encouraged input from people across the sector to think about how we drive that. And in relation to EDI, we're really focused on anti-oppressive practice, on anti-racist practice, thinking about how people apply that within practice. So I really wanted to highlight that, given the comments that you made, George. We'll also be looking at objective 3, so I'll focus a little bit more on that. I had a bit of a preparatory conversation with BASW, and we thought that the data and insights and the registration areas were the 2 that would be most helpful to highlight today. There are 3 other objectives, so I'll just quickly go through those, but as I say, I won't spotlight them in the interest of time. But we're also looking at how we improve our digital channels and services, again, ensuring on inclusivity, and really thinking about how we work with people who are using our services. So we are really improving our user testing at the moment. Objective 5 is very internal centered. So it's really thinking about how we ensure that we can support and motivate our people. We've been doing lots of different work around ensuring inclusivity. We recently had a pilot around mentoring, and it's focused on a reciprocal approach, and it's really thinking about how people who are more traditionally marginalized can work with some of our leaders and other people across the organization to really think about how they can share their learning and experience. We really championed our employee networks, and really thinking about how we can support people to ensure that their lived experience is captured in the way that we're working. And we've also been doing a lot of work around recruitment more broadly as well. So it feels really important to think about how we ensure that we're inclusive as an employer as well as a regulator. And then objective 6 is about how we're continually developing and improving, and really thinking about how we're able to ensure that we're an organisation that delivers the right outcomes in a really fiscally responsible way. So I'll now do a spotlight on the 2 areas that I talked about. So I'll start with data. So what we've committed to is sharing data and insight about the social work profession and our regulation, and really looking at how we're able to support leaders and policymakers to drive change and ensure that our processes are safe and fair. We really struggled with a lack of data across social work for some time, particularly in understanding the makeup of the register. So it's been really useful to be able to capture that. And ultimately, we've been able to get around 94% of data from social workers, or at least one aspect of data from social workers. And it's been really useful to be able to understand that. And we've shared these findings in our Social Work in England report. I'm happy to pop the relevant links in the chat shortly. And what's been really useful is to really think about understanding the makeup of the register and then using this to drive some of our initiatives, but also sharing this with the broader sector so they can also use that as part of their decision making. So I'll focus a little bit more on the analysis that we've recently undertaken shortly. But I think it feels really important to think about different areas of insight that we have around this work. So not only are we using the data, but we also really recognise the value that we have through engagement opportunities, so through more informal avenues of information. So we have a regional engagement team, and I know Bijou, you linked in with Vicky, who's our regional lead for London, and really thinking about how we highlight some of the examples that people are sharing with us. So that informs what we're doing as well. We also look at other inquiries that we're receiving and feedback that we get, so we can really think about how we use that to shape our work. And then it's also about how we commission research and also think about broader issues that we're hearing about across the sector and how we work with people collectively to really impact change. So we've established a national workforce roundtable, and we bring together key stakeholders. So that includes colleagues from BASW, from the Department for Education, from the Department for Health and Social Care. It includes colleagues from local authorities, from the principal social worker networks, and a range of others. So it feels really important to look at how we can collectively impact some of this. And I'll talk a little more about that shortly. So focusing on the analysis of diversity data that we shared then, in September, we published a report on our initial analysis. And this really speaks to the promises that we made within our strategy and within our EDI action plan. And it's about really sharing the data and insights that we've got. We are one of the few organisations that has a whole sector oversight, and so we can really look at some of the concerns or issues that are coming up across the sector. And given that we acknowledge that there is a fragmentation within social work at times, it feels really important for us to have a whole sector lens. And we really want to make sure that that's driven through data and insights, and ensuring that we're sharing that with the rest of the sector. And we really hope that the commitments that we've made around data and insights will enable us to support national policy development, workforce planning and policy research, and influence broader work across the sector, like workforce planning that I mentioned. So some of you may have already seen the analysis that we shared, but for those of you who haven't, I'll just do a quick summary over what the report tells us and talk through some of the key findings. So the report ultimately tells us about our fitness to practice referrals and progression through our fitness to practice process. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that it's the first step on a longer journey. And we really need to understand how some of the findings are going to really help us to progress some actions. And we've taken some immediate actions, which I'll talk about shortly, but also looking at how sometimes the more you delve into certain areas, and particularly for the researchers among us, often you end up with more questions as you start to delve through some of your findings as well. So it feels really important for us to acknowledge that this will be a step-by-step process, and we'll really want to think about what we find and go back and make sure that everything we're sharing is robust. And over time, what we really hope that this analysis will enable us to do is to understand where social workers are impacted by inequality or discrimination, for example, in fitness to practice referrals, but also to understand the impact of our policies as well. So looking at how we review CPD, but also more broadly looking at the fairness in our processes, and help us to just build that more detailed picture of social work and ensure that what we're doing is driven by what we understand about the sector. So the data that we used was actually provided to us through our renewal process last year. And it's the data we collected that we analysed from March 23, so earlier this year. We actually first started to collect the data in June 21, but we had a very low response rate. And we tried to get that through some more comms and really looking at how we target people, but ultimately building it into the process and working with other key stakeholders really enabled us to gather this data. But I think what's also really important to acknowledge is that although we have 94% of data from social workers, we still have some significant gaps in data from those individuals who are in the fitness to practice process. And that's because there's only around 2% of social workers who go through our fitness to practice process. And some of those who are going through the fitness to practice process are on the register, but have not gone through the renewal process, or we may have missed their data. So we're looking at how we can strengthen data going forward. But we've still got enough data to be able to make some and share some significant findings. So I've highlighted the list of categories that we used in our analysis, and age and gender identity and nationality were always collected, but sex, disability, sexual orientation, ethnic group and religion or belief are the new categories that we added and now have information for. So I've already touched on ensuring that our data is robust, and we achieved this through independent assurance. So we worked with colleagues from different regulatory bodies, particularly the NMC, the Nursing Midwifery Council, and the GMC, the General Medical Council, because they've done a lot of work around data collection and analysis over quite a significant period of time. We also consulted with an independent academic to provide some advice on the work that we're doing and guidance and on our approach. And in addition to that, we also looked at best practice around how to carry out data analysis and collection. And again, there are often variations in how to do this, but ensuring that we were testing this and looking at what's the best way to do it all the way through felt really important to us, because we wanted to make sure that what we were sharing was as accurate as possible. So the summary of our findings then. So our initial analysis indicated that the groups in the table are the ones that appear to be overrepresented in fitness to practice referrals, and also at the hearing stage. So I think we've known for some time anecdotally that men and people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds are overrepresented in our referrals, but it's been really useful for us to be able to really explore that in a methodical way and be able to highlight that. So on the table, you'll see that we've got the percentage of social workers that are on the register, and then the percentage of referrals that are received by us. And then we've also got the percentage of cases that are referred to hearings. So I've already mentioned that the cases that are referred to hearings has got a lower. Important for us to recognise what we're seeing in the existing data set, which is around 60. So next steps in relation to further analysis, but also our activity related to the findings that have been shared, is that we've started to share these findings very broadly with the sector, starting to encourage people to think about the referrals that they make. So we have established a single point of contact network, so that we have a specific contact at every local authority within England, and we've been working with them to really look at how we can explore their processes, looking at how we can work with them to ensure that the concerns that are raised about social workers to Social Work England have been explored, and that they appear to be fair. There's a lot of conversation around how we ensure that concerns are resolved at a local level, because ultimately only the more serious concerns should be raised with us as the regulator. So it's really looking at how we can work with people to resolve issues more locally, and we're doing a lot of work on this with our regional engagement team. We're also looking at how we can use some of the findings to improve our regulation and processes as well. So we've started to update guidance. We're also looking at more targeted recruitment. Last year, when we went out to look at recruiting for more panelists for our fitness to practice hearings, we did some targeted recruitment and significantly increased the diversity of our panels. We're just completing our recruitment for legal advisors on our panels. And again, we've taken a targeted recruitment approach and really looking at how we can ensure that people who perhaps haven't got as much regulatory experience feel able to apply for the role. People from communities that we aren't seeing as represented on the panels are able to sit on those panels and really look at how we can strengthen our training and induction processes to support people to do that if we feel that they are right for the role. We've also really looked at how we can improve our asks around what experience is required for some of these roles. So again, we're really offering people the opportunity to come and work with us and really think about reducing any potential barriers that there may be. So that feels really important for us to continue, particularly where we think representation is limited. We're also in the process of establishing an advisory group that will support us on the technical aspects of our work and really looking at how we can ensure that the quality of what we're sharing continues to remain high. And we're looking at how we incorporate some of these findings into our learning and development pathways to improve the way that we work with people and also inform how we train our people to ensure our processes are equitable. And then we're also incorporating these findings into our broader work. So I mentioned the National Workforce Roundtable earlier, and one of the key areas that we're focusing on is international recruitment and retention and recruitment more broadly as well. So we really want to think about how we use these findings to inform our work in that area. The other thing that I wanted to just note is that we also deliver fitness to practice workshops. So we deliver them on a quarterly basis. And where you feel that there might be employers who may, or people who are working within people teams or social workers and managers who are responsible for making fitness to practice referrals, we really advise them to attend our workshops. And this will support them with thinking about what is a fair referral, really thinking about what we will take on as a referral, and really describe our process so they feel fully informed about making referrals before they raise a concern with us. So just something for people to note and share. So that was objective 1. The other area that I wanted to highlight is objective 3, and this is ensuring that our registration processes are fair, responsive and efficient. And we really have looked at how we can identify opportunities to improve the fairness of our registration and advice processes. And we've committed to do this over the next 3 years, and we've already started some work around this already. And we've also looked at how we explore the issues around international social workers and the potential impact on recruitment and retention. And I've mentioned we're doing that collectively around the National Workforce Roundtable. I thought that what would be helpful more broadly is to also look at what we're finding and the changing landscape in relation to international recruitment. So between 21 to 22, we received 1,685 application forms from overseas applicants So it represents a significant increase, 175.8 increase compared to the applications received in 2019 to 2020. And of the applications we received, over half of them came from 3 countries, so South Africa, Zimbabwe and India. And so this equates to an increase of 842 applications from these countries alone. And really looking at the different applications that we've seen, and we've seen an increase over the first quarter as well. So you'll see that there's been a month-on-month increase. And there is a list on the website of overseas social work qualifications that we've assessed if people are interested in that. But what's really important for us as well is that we're really required to look at how we report on this data, and we update this information on a quarterly basis. So I'm sure that that will be of real interest to this network. So please have a look at that if you want to explore that in a bit more detail. So when I met with BASW, I think we had a couple of conversations about what feels helpful and what some of the challenges are around the application process. And for those of you who are meeting and talking to people who are in the process of registering, it's really important for you to encourage them to read the guidance on our website. We reviewed that again based on feedback that we've received from yourselves, from other stakeholders that we work with, from colleagues from different representative bodies and social workers and different agencies that we work with, because we really want to ensure that it feels really helpful. We've streamlined areas where we thought that we could, and then we've strengthened areas where people wanted more information, for example, around skills, knowledge and behaviours. So we've really tried to think about how we support people to do that. We've also created a pre-application checklist. Again, we recognise that it can be quite a complicated process, so we thought that it'd be really helpful to support people to be able to look at what is required. And we also really encourage people to ensure that they're able to do this in a really thoughtful and considered way. We know sometimes people say that it takes a very long time, but often if we have to come back to people to ask for more information, that delays the process. We attempt to undertake the initial assessment within 60 days. And if there aren't any delays with any information that we need, then we are able to meet that. But ultimately, our priority as a regulator is to protect the public, and we have to ensure that any information that applicants provide is in line with our rules and regulations and guidance. So it's essential that everything we receive is accurate, and that we're able to have confidence that people who are on the register are fit to practice. And I think one of the other things that BASW highlighted is some of the challenges around different definitions of social work in different countries. And I think, George, you spoke earlier about social work is global, and I 100% agree. And I think its impact is vast, and it is applied in lots of different settings. But I think some of the challenges that we have is that different people have different definitions of what counts as social work. So it feels really important for us to be able to be confident that that people on the social work register are complying with our rules and regulations and guidance. So this is why I'd really encourage everybody to have a look at this guidance before applying. And more broadly, we've been doing a lot of work to support international social workers and think about how we can work with different employers. And we've been doing a lot of this work through our engagement team. And this is a reflection from a principal social worker. And they share that in our region, we've seen an increase in international social workers applying for posts. For this cohort of staff, there are other areas that need consideration, which are different to our national recruitment. This includes ensuring that they have accommodation when they arrive in the country, setting up bank accounts, providing information around how public services work, to name a few. And as the numbers have increased, we've set up a central team to manage and coordinate this area alongside our central recruitment team. This is still in early stages, but we hope it will make transition to another country easier and help retain this group of staff. And we've heard from a range of different stakeholders and employers about some of the things that they've put in place to support different social workers who they've recruited from overseas, but also some of the challenges that they faced in offering that support and some of the challenges that those social workers have experienced. And we really want to look at how we can work with them to make sure that that process is as smooth as possible. One of the other things that Social Work England is a key part of is the anti-racist steering group, and we work with a range of different stakeholders, so principal social workers, Skills for Care, the Department for Education, to name a few. And it's really thinking about how we can focus on areas like international recruitment to support that really smooth transition wherever possible, and look at how we share learning across from that as well. We recognise that it's a difficult process moving to another country and then having to deal with lots of different systems, both within your personal and professional life. And we really want to think about how we can work collectively with the sector to ensure that that is as smooth as possible. And our registration team do a lot of work with employers to help support that transition as well. So I appreciate I've shared an awful lot there, and I know that there's a Q&A section a little later, but if there are any immediate questions, I'm happy to take those.
Maybe one, because I'm conscious of that. It was really, really interesting presentation, Amina, but I'm conscious of the time and so much needs to be covered. So if there's any burning question, I'm happy to take one. Otherwise, can we have the question later on? If there's anything, let me know.
Hi, my name is Christina. Actually, I'm from India, and I've been registered under Social Work England for past 2 years, coming from India. And right now, I couldn't get any opportunity back then from there to come to UK through work visa. So I had to take a course, and right now I'm in Leeds. Taking a course of child and adolescents mental health, and I'm still registered I've been renewing my Social Work England. I would like to know, for me to proceed with after my student's visa to proceed with the work, how can the Social Work England can help me out?
Christina, just because that's quite a specific question, could we take that outside of this space? I think because that relates specifically to you, and I think we can do that outside of this, I think that would be useful.
I thought so.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Okay, I mean, I'm happy to take any questions later on, but I'm conscious of the time. Thank you, Amina. That was a really, really interesting presentation, very, very reflective and drawing on a lot of data. I also have a lot of questions, having, sat on a number of conversations with your counterpart in Scotland, our Scottish Social Services Council, and the universities offering social work in Scotland. We occasionally come together to debate and discuss some of these conversations. So I'm quite aware of what is going on in Scotland, as well as some of the, not indeed in depth, but some understanding of the landscape in the rest of the United Kingdom as well. So thank you very much for that. And so now we have a very, very interesting keynote from David. David needs no introduction whatsoever, and he has already been introduced by early on by Araminda. But basically, just to say that, there's very few people in the social work world who wouldn't know David, globally for that matter. I came to know David, I think in 2006, when I joined the BASW International Committee, and he was the president of IFSW, I think at that time. And subsequently, he got involved in the development of the global agenda for social work and social development, now adopted by the UN. And he's still leading on that. And he holds a number of roles, as chair or board member in a range of spaces, and have been given, or his work has been recognized locally and globally through a range of awards, which I won't go into the details of it. And so he's also an honorary fellow with us in the University of Edinburgh. So as I said, he doesn't require any introduction, but he's a global champion of social work for that matter. So I'm delighted that David is here to give the keynote address. And over to you, David.
Thank you, George, and greetings to everybody. Thank you for asking me again to talk. And there is so much that came out of the previous conversation with Amina, which I'm sure has stimulated lots of questions. For a good few years, I was involved with COSW, the previous regulator, or several behind. It's a bit of a appalling state of affairs that we've had so many changes of regulator in such a short time. But it's good that Social Work England and the social work regulators around the UK are getting to grips with these serious issues. And I suppose I would just say, by way of introduction, that having been on the council and having been director of operations on COSW, I can say never underestimate the direct influence of government on the regulators. The reality is that the regulators are paid for by government, and that gives them a lot of power. And in the space of race and equality, I know from my personal experience of talking with ministers and with others in previous governments that there are levers that can be pulled and influence that can be brought to bear. And it's a tough role to be in between the profession and government. It is a really tough role, and I have been there and I know. And sometimes it's impossible for the regulator to talk about, but I know in my time, when there was a big attack on COSW related to race issues, and we had a meeting with a minister that was extremely difficult. And the sector doesn't know sometimes how much defensive work is going on behind the scenes. I've no idea. I'm out of touch with what's happening now, and I'm not commenting on what's happening now, but we are in a difficult time. And it's a difficult time globally. So I felt we should remember, as Gaza continues and as there are conflicts in various parts of the world, we need to remember just last week, the highest number of UN humanitarian workers ever killed in one week took place. So it's really important to remember that the work that we do and our colleagues around the world do is often dangerous, and indeed it can be in this country as well. And that whereas we all stand for peace and reconciliation, it's important that we do remember our colleagues who are in the very front line of conflict. Whether that's in Ukraine and Russia, whether it's in Israel and Palestine, whether it's in the Congo, whether it's in Sudan or Yemen, there are many places where social workers are in really difficult circumstances. And you can't talk about social work and the challenges of practice without recognizing that, I think, at this time. So what I'm going to talk about is two different things. One is to reflect on the context for social work practice in the UK. And then I'm going to talk a bit about Commonwealth social work and international dimensions. But this is just an overview. It's in a sense building some empathy, because I think we are in a challenging time. The statistics from Social Work England are really interesting in terms of the increase in demand. The reality is, as you know, that UK social work cannot continue without continued overseas recruitment. So that's really important. And we know that the demand for social work and for social services is increasing. But we also know that we're seeing reducing resources. There's discussion of tax cuts in the autumn statement, but also benefit cuts. We know that that will directly impact on some of our work. So austerity has over the last decade or more has reduced resources, local government losing up to 50% of its funding. And yet we're facing rising demand. And we've seen the Association of County Councils just this week, in fact, might even be today, saying that the costs of transport for children with special needs going to school is putting a major pressure on budgets. So that's one context. The workforce pressures that we've seen, the high level of vacancies, issues around burnout and stress following the pandemic in the health and social care. That is a global phenomenon. It's happening all around the world. I was discussing it in a Commonwealth forum just very recently, but it's also an impact here. And I think in this forum, I should acknowledge that the hostile environment has created a really difficult impact for practitioners and for social workers who can be clearly identified. There are, in a way, the hostile environment has given permission to people to express, if you like, their racism or their ambivalence. And that's a complicated issue, and I haven't got time to go into some of the difficulties and the challenges around practice. But I think we have to acknowledge that, and we have to acknowledge that that means that social workers from minority communities, who are very visibly not from the host community, have to take more care about their safety now. It's something that I'm sure is on the minds of many of you. Not all the time, perhaps, or perhaps it is all the time. But that change, I'm ashamed that has been created in my country, but it's a reality. And I know that that means that people have to think more carefully. And I would advise you to think carefully and to take care about the relationships. I know it means it's an extra level of anticipation, which many of you will have to be living with, and it creates stress and anxiety. And sometimes managers don't understand that fully. They haven't been through that experience. They don't know what it means. And I think we need to recognize that. That's in terms of personal safety, as well as issues about recruitment and other areas. Amina's talked about the regulation issues, and I don't need to dwell on them, but those are complex, and I don't mean to be simplistic about it. But in a way, it's not surprising that there are particular pressures around race and diversity, because if that's what the society is structured around, then it will be seen in our processes as well. But it's really good that Social Work England, somebody needs to mute their microphone. I don't know that Bijou, you can do that. Yeah, thank you. So there's a set of challenging issues around regulation issues. But as Thomas said right at the very beginning, it's always important to remember that there are examples of good practice. And I know as an inspector, when I was working with the Audit Commission and the Commission for Social Care Inspection, and then for Ofsted, which I did, that you always find examples of good practice, even in areas which are really struggling and difficult, and areas of good practice in terms of race and diversity. They do exist. There are managers who are very experienced about it. I'm a governor of a NHS trust, and they have just, I think, won an award for the support that they give. It's been judged outstanding by the CQC. One of the few mental health trusts that has achieved that. And one of the things they do well is to provide support to their overseas recruited staff and people from minority communities. And that is visible from the top. And it is about leadership, and it's a challenge to leaders to make sure that is applied everywhere. And the Diaspora Special Interest Group, which Yohai and Amina Priya will talk about. I'm pleased to be a member of the steering group of that, and that is a place which is raising these issues. They're in discussion with Department for Health and Social Care and with Department for Education. Government civil servants are listening to the information that they're bringing forward. They have already tweaked it. The first guidance published just over a year ago from the Department for Health and Social Care about overseas recruitment for health and social care was so health dominated and so ignored the context of social care. It was shocking. That is my experience everywhere, that when health people talk, they'll talk about health and well-being. And when you say, let's include some of the social care, there's no argument about it. Everybody agrees that it needs to be done, but they just keep forgetting. And that was my experience when I was working in the Department of Health. So we just have to keep going. And thank goodness there's the Diaspora Special Interest Group now, which is making sure that these issues keep being focused on. Well, to segue quickly into the Commonwealth, and I've got to be quite quick, I thought I should pull the curtains back on the new poster for World Social Work Day for next year. It's just been published. It's picking up on a concept that comes from Latin America, Buen Vivir, which I think is Portuguese, but maybe Spanish. It's similar to French for those of you who speak French. Bon vivre in French. Buen Vivir is about understanding the connection between people and their environments. And sometimes that's a struggle for social workers, but actually we're always interested in people's environments, their housing, their circumstances, the space that they're in. And the history of social work goes back to the 19th century in this country, when the people who were setting the social work agencies up in many ways were also people who were involved in setting up, creating the National Trust. And somehow we lost that connection between green spaces and the physical environment and the social environment. And it's right that we should bring it back together. And the Global Agenda for Social Work has done that. George, I think I've probably got about 5 minutes to just talk a little bit about the Commonwealth. Thanks. This may be of interest to you, and it's ways in which we can talk about social work and make sure the voice of social work is heard in global activities. Of course, I'm not talking about the International Federation of Social Workers. COSW and IFSW work very closely together, and we make sure that things are seen. Just a reminder that the Commonwealth, of course, includes India and the Indian subcontinent, as well as large parts of Africa, growing parts of Africa with new members joining, and parts of Asia, many small island states. Formed in 1949, India was a founder member, and it's now a voluntary association of 56 independent and equal countries. However big or small, the countries all have one vote, same as in IFSW, and indeed COSW is changing our constitution in the same way. Of course, it's based on shared colonial histories, but there are now 3 countries in the Commonwealth that were not part of the British Empire, and it has 1/3 of the global population in it. And the Commonwealth Charter promotes prosperity, democracy, and peace, and recognises the importance of civil society. So COSW, the Commonwealth Organisation for Social Work, is an accredited organisation within the Commonwealth. And that means that we play our part in the Commonwealth Forum. So here you see a picture of me speaking at the recent Youth Ministers meeting. I had a 2-minute slot. And you see the Commonwealth Secretary General on the right there, and from India was chairing that Commonwealth Youth Minister. Sorry, it was Pakistan. Sorry, it was Pakistan that was chairing that meeting that was due to be held in Pakistan in January, but was postponed because of the floods. And so we are accredited. We have engagement with heads of government. As COSW, we actually have access to receptions and meetings with ministers and with heads of government. This happens to be me at Buckingham Palace with the chief exec of CFAB on Commonwealth Day. We do have access in the heads of government meetings, especially to ministers. There's a regular dialogue with the Secretary General. I'm on the Commonwealth Advisory Committee on Health. It's a 2-year term, but I've been able to influence the communiques that ministers have signed off, and particularly to ensure that well-being and social issues are not forgotten in a health context. It's the Advisory Committee on Health, but I'm always making sure that it's all about health and well-being. There's a specific reference, Amina, to regulation and to mobility of staff and pressures on staff in health and social care. So there are some issues, and one of the things we're thinking about is whether we should reactivate Commonwealth interest in mobility of workers. There's teachers, and they've been in the past teachers and health professionals protocols. There was recently a study on the accredited organisations, which was recently passed, re-emphasising the importance of those. And we can take part in a whole range of things, including the Commonwealth Year of Youth, which is this year running into next year. But we also, as I say, attend heads of government meetings. The last one was in Kigali. These are our delegates to the meeting. It's quite an amazing thing. I sat in on when it was in London in 2018, the foreign ministers meeting, sitting in a big circle like that. We can't speak, but we can sit in and observe and meet up with people in receptions and so forth. So there are opportunities for influence. And then there are a range of partnerships. There's the Independent Forum of Commonwealth Organisations. I'm on the steering group of that. There's the Commonwealth Children's Interest Group, which I'm currently chairing, which is looking at a declaration on childcare law reform. UK government, through the Foreign Development Office, is involved in that. And we have access to talk about those sorts of policies and making connections between the UK departments and the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office. A whole range of areas where we're working in partnerships. And then we also have partnerships with the International Association of Schools of Social Work, the Working Environment Research Project, which we're working on. It's a global study of the working environment for social workers. And that study, based on work with Bath University, Germaine Revalier, who is doing work with BASW and Social Workers Union and others, but is also doing this global study, which is a medium-term study. We're getting now into, I think, the 4th year. And we know that social workers have some of the most difficult working environments of any profession. And that is documented, and it is objective, and it relates to the way that managers relate to staff, but also the working environment in more general terms. And this is a global reality. And so we need to make sure that we use that data, we build it, and the survey is now open. If you go to the ifsw.org.uk, every social worker will be pleased to respond to the survey. It's open now, and it will run until December. So that's a key issue for you. And we're also working with Carers Trust we've taken the lead on a Young Carers Charter. We're also working on the People's Charter for an Eco-Social World, and we're involved in the Social Work History Network. So here is our Young Carers Charter that's now been recognised by youth ministers and by health ministers, and we hope that it will be endorsed by heads of government. And we've got a comparative histories of the development of social work across the Commonwealth project. George is involved with that. I've been talking with the new director of the Institute of Commonwealth Studies. The Vice-Chancellor of the University of London is supporting this. And we're hoping that we'll be able to lift that off. And we've already done some webinars, and you can see it on our website. And we then run a series of webinars. Time is pressing, so I've got to keep moving. But we've run a series, including with BASW, migration of social workers. And we're running an occasional series on regulation of social work, as social work regulation is of interest in all Commonwealth countries. There's a lot of development around the world on regulation. We've already had one on India. We've had one on the UK. I think the next will be on Zambia, who've had recent legislation. Malawi is developing as well. So there are lots of issues, and that's something that we will continue to unpack, looking at the challenges of regulation and the different forms of regulation that happen. So when we have a newsletter, which is on our website, the next one is due out any day. So there are ways that you can catch up. And we will be reopening our associate membership scheme in the new year. We've been going through a constitutional review, but it will then be possible, and there's no fee for registration. We will be asking for donations, but if I tell you our current bank balance is £800, you'll see that we are an organisation that depends on enthusiasm and voluntary activity. One of the things we have been doing is focusing on young carers as I'm coming to an end. And we're really pleased that Arishay Williams of the JLS band, who was himself a young carer, is a Commonwealth Young Carer Champion. And I recently went to his concert in Newcastle with JLS, which was a new experience for me. Took my grandsons and they had a great time. But Arishay is really committed to support for young carers, and we've chosen that as a focus. I don't know, George, if we've got time, but I have got a 3-minute song from Arishay about young carers, which he sang at St James's Palace. I've got a thumbs up, so I'll just say that he sang this, launched it at the Policy Forum on the 21st of October this year. And he sang it at the Commonwealth Youth Awards in St James's Palace just recently. So that's a thank you from me, and I'll stop sharing this. And I pray, Amina, you had challenges. I'm going to pray that I can now share the screen and optimize for video clip. I've got to do that. And then share. I don't want to share that one. Sorry, that's this is always the challenge, isn't it? I don't know why that came up. Right, so I've got to go for advanced. That's it, and then I go for video, and I think we're ready to go. So let's hope.
Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, to celebrate the Europe and Canada regional winner, I'm pleased to invite a young man who is a passionate advocate for young people, a young carer himself, who today we want to acknowledge as a Commonwealth champion for young carers. Help me welcome Arishay Williams with a round of applause, please.
I was just 12 years old when my mom was diagnosed. Multiple sclerosis, what is that though? Please God, this can't be real. We were just kids and she was still young. Responsibilities we turned into fun. We're young carers, that's what we were told. Together we'll climb this hill. Young carers, you're precious like gold. Young carers, we clap so you know. Clap for young carers at home, let's go. Clap for young carers at home, let's go. Clap for young carers at home. You'll be okay. Oh, how you shining and glow like a diamond. You need reminding. Your stars are aligning when your soul's feeling tired. Strength, you can find it. You can find it. Seek it or hide it. Look how you shine. We all feel pressure. We all feel pressure. We all feel pressure. Yeah, yeah. Let's come together. Let's come together. Let's come together. What you going through? You feel like you're the only. Nobody ever wanna feel lonely. You're a winner, but ain't looking for no trophy. Just remember that through everything you go through, there are people in the world who love you. You're a hero and we all appreciate you. Yeah. Oh, how you shining. Glow like a diamond. You need reminding. The stars are aligning when your soul's feeling tired. Strength, you can find it. Seek it, hiding. Look how you shining. Yeah. We all feel pressure. We all feel pressure. Hey, hey. Let's come together. Let's come together. Let's come together. Maybe you can feel what young carers around the Commonwealth feel.
George, I hope you heard that okay. Thank you very much. And these are tough times for everybody. We need to talk about them, but remember also, as Thomas was saying, there are positives, and you bring so much of that knowledge of diversity that we do need to celebrate, as the BASW will do in the Special Interest Group conference coming up in March. Thank you, George. I'm sorry I've got to go for something else soon, but if there are one or two quick questions.
Thank you, David. That was amazing that someone's work has really helped, to bring about so much change and greater understanding of the global context of social work and the rich tapestry of knowledge and expertise that lie in different parts of the world, and how these can come together to influence practice, to influence policy, and basically influence change for the betterment of the social work world. Thank you so much. I don't want to go into detailed conversation about my reflection on it, but if there are any brief questions, broad general questions for David, I'm happy to take that at the moment.
It's difficult in this sort of environment to know sort of what to ask, but the key thing is, I always feel, is to understand that daily practice, visiting people in their homes and meeting people locally, doing the work of assessment and working on the computer, is connected to a global reality, and that isn't always obvious, but the global pressures, in particularly for the UK, I can tell you that CFAB, Children and Families Across Borders, has contact every year with more countries than any other country equivalent agency does. We are a more diverse country, and we know that. And it's a reality, and pretending that it isn't true and that we haven't got to deal with the issues that flow from that is a denial of truth. So making that connection and remembering that we are part, and I hope that it's helpful for colleagues to know that there are people who are listening to what the reality of experience is in that daily practice, and taking that to shape, as Social Work England is, the national context, but also globally, that there are voices. And I think over the last 10, 20 years, those voices internationally have got stronger and more influential. And are able to influence the United Nations. Of course, it's not a simple thing. It never is simple. It's naive to think that things can change rapidly or quickly, but you need persistence and determination. And there are people around the world, including the president of IFSW now in Zambia, Joachim. There's the president of COSW is in India, in Chennai. Sylvia is Sylvia Daisy at Madras Christian College. Some of you know her. She's the president. So it's good to make those connections, and thank you for your contribution here in this country. We couldn't do it without you.
David, I know you are against time, but there's one question to be raised by Priya here. Priya, very quickly.
No, it's just not a question. I just want to, David is part of our special interest group, and he's very instrumental in, when I raised this in the committee, in the international committee, he was the chair then. And he was, I think you could have heard from him, the world is in his heart. So it was very easy to bring our cause. And I think he was very instrumental in starting the special interest group. So I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you for that, David.
Thanks, Priya. And the idea came out of a meeting in 2018 in the wings of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. We had a meeting. The minister came and spoke to it. There wasn't a lot of people there, but it did attract a very diverse audience. And some of the people in the audience said, we want support for social workers from the diaspora. And it took a bit of time to get it together, but Priya was a key person in that. I'm glad that we've done it, and all credit to the Diaspora group. Duke, Tran, and Priya, the co-chairs, have really made a difference, have had an impact, and have been heard in the corridors of government, and that's not easy. So it's applause to them. Thank you. I've got to go, sorry, but thanks,
Thanks,
George,
Dave.
and thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. I am very conscious of the time, so I would like to create a little bit of space for questions, reflections on presentation by Amina. But I'm also wondering whether everyone would be happy to extend the seminar by half an hour.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I'll need to leave at 12, unfortunately. Apologies.
That's okay, Amina. That's okay, because I also have something to do, and but you know, there is a lot of very interesting stuff here, and I just thought it would be unwise if you don't use the time. So those of you who are busy or something pressing happening after 12 o'clock, you know, there's no pressure for you to stay on, but I thought it would be great if you can stay on for another half an hour. So I would take at least for the next sort of 5-8 minutes, some questions, reflections on Amina's presentation. I guess while people are thinking about their reflections and question, Amina, it was a really, really interesting presentation, and the way you pull things together to reflect on the landscape of social work England. And I know from my time here, when I came here, it was the SETSWA, which sort of over time became the, I think, the General Social Care Council, and it had several iterations, which has now really become the Social Work England. And I hope it stays as it is, not being subject to the whims and fancies of, you know, policymakers and ministerial directives for that matter. And it's really interesting when you talked about you have data from 2019. So I'm wondering what happened to the data before that, for that matter, like, you know, which was, you know, compiled by the predecessors. And that's a different question, but it was interesting and really, really important to reflect on the progress you have made as an organization, as a regulatory framework, to take on board some of the uniqueness of the context in which social work from diaspora community, minoritized background operate, you know, be they are born here or, you know, born and brought up in different parts of the world and then studied there and come to work here. And as I was having conversation with David many years ago when I was writing a book on global social work, and his reflection about local is global and global is local, and there is that inextricable link between what's happening here and its impact on different parts of the world. And he started by the conversation about, the hostile environment. Ministers in this country very, very gladly, very proudly talk about creating a hostile environment here. And the world is, there is a lot of instances where within the world that we are part of, there is a lot of spaces where hostile environment is being created. And then how do we sort of work against that, a social work profession which is here to sort of champion the causes of marginalized and the oppressed, trying to sort of promote justice, equality, and fairness and human rights? How can we really promote the profile of social work globally as well as locally? And it is important to recognize that what happens globally has an impact locally. For example, I work in the area of migration, forced displacement, and okay, we are a signatory to the Geneva Convention, a number of conventions that relates to the movement of people. But then when it comes to people who are seeking asylum in this country, it becomes a different conversation, and or social workers have very little voice in championing their causes for that matter. But it does have an impact on how life is constructed here. For example, so many people come to this country, the country of United Kingdom, either in search of employment, family connections, or seeking safety and protection because they have been, impacted by those kind of issues. And within that, we are creating a, directly or indirectly, knowingly or unknowingly, we are creating a population that is diverse. And therefore, we need to have, put it bluntly, that diversity brings richness to the workforce for that matter. So it's important to acknowledge and learn lessons from that diverse community. And lots, I can go on for that because I am a lecturer and I can talk for hours, but I don't want to do that. I don't know whose hand went up first, so let me just have a quick look to see who is asking for questions. So otherwise, sorry, 1 second. I'll just go Biju. I don't know whether your hand is first. I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah. It's all right. Don't worry about it. So I just wanted. I mean, I know we spoke in the past, and when in the conversations, I did mention these things to you. As a forum, we get a lot of people who contacting us with various issues around registration process and things. So one of the key challenges they're facing is like the time scale that it is taking recently to get an answer, to the registration process. Some of these guys, people are waiting because they had their interviews. They're waiting for the registration to start their jobs, and because that's not happening, they had to cancel their COS, and they have to go back again for the interview process. The employees are pulling out from their contractual agreement, saying that you don't have the registration now. So that's one thing. And secondly, the key skills framework that using to assess. I know Priya and her team is doing a great job in terms of like looking at how the framework and things is working. But from an Indian context, like I qualified from India, so it's a bit old, but still, I qualified from India and came here. Didn't have to go through all these the major registration process. Still had to go through with the GCSE, General Social Care Council at the time. But it was quite relatively, smoother in a sense of registration process wise. But these days, like from a cultural context, the evidence that social work England is looking for from an overseas applicant is much harder to get, because it's not. Well, firstly, it's not a registered, legalized profession in India. Most of the placements are all non-statutory in nature, and they don't have any statutory provisions to offer placements. And third, the evidence, like most of the evidence that you count as an evidence is non-existence in an Indian context, in terms of starting with the numbers, with the number of placement days that you required. So which leads them to, like, once you come off from the course as well, there isn't any statutory roles waiting for them to join, like what we have got here. So they have to go through any kind of private sector employments and, to get it. But when they do that, that's not been counted as an evidence here, employment support evidence here. So is there anything that we could do differently to support this cohort of applicant? I don't know what about other countries, but purely from Indian context, I think this is a key challenge for them. And these are the questions that we always get. So I always find it very difficult to answer these questions because I don't know. So is there anything that we could do differently or bring that perspective into the process?
So I think there's two aspects here. I think what the requirements for social workers over a period of time have changed. I think you're quite right that they've been strengthened. I think over the learning through regulation, I think there's been a real focus on looking at how we ensure fitness to practice, both just more generally in regulation. And I understand obviously there are different impacts for international social workers, but I think the expectations over the course of training have changed significantly. And I think we're looking at that more generally as well. So I referenced some of the work that we're doing around standards for all social workers in relation to training. So I think there has been an increase, but I think that's based on the gaps that we think that we've seen within the sector more generally. This was even before us, but obviously we've taken some of this forward. So I think there is a broader focus on how we improve quality of practice. And then in relation to the length of time comments that you made, Biju, I think I referred to this in my presentation, that I think sometimes what we're finding is that people aren't reading the guidance, and then often they are submitting applications which then they think have got everything they need, but then we're having to go back to them and then say this information is missing. So we've taken on board some of the feedback that we've received from people and created a checklist that I mentioned that I put in the chat. and also updated the guidance so there's more information around things like knowledge, skills and behaviours, because again, we recognise that there are differences. I absolutely hear the challenges that you've said, but I think one of the things that we're finding difficult is that, again, we're looking at social work in the global context, and again, how different countries describe it, different processes that take place around social work, means that it's difficult for us to kind of look at every country on an individual basis. So I think we've created the guidance that we've created to think about how we can be confident that the standards that we expect from all social workers are being met. And that's what we've highlighted within the guidance that I've again popped in the chat so that people have got access to it. What we're really keen to do is to continue to work with you and obviously hear some of the difficulties that people are having, and really think about how we can continue to use that to start to continue to improve our processes. There may be some things that we can explore and change. So, for instance, people gave us feedback on the fact that we ask for additional verification from a respected member of the community. We've now been able to remove that because we recognise that that posed an additional barrier. So where we think that there are some things that we can look at and streamline, then we are able to do that. But obviously, our processes are based on our legislation. So it's really thinking about what we must have and must be able to meet, but really keen to continue to hear your feedback and start to think about anything else that we may be able to look at and streamline as we go forward.
Thanks, Amina. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, George, just I'm conscious that Priya had a hand up and then put it down. So I don't know whether there was a follow-up, and I thought she was waiting quite a while beforehand as well. So I just wanted to check in if there was anything, Priya.
Priya, you want something?
I think two things. One, it'll be a shame that, I would like, probably to link with Amina after this meeting, because you might be here for my presentation. And this is a huge issue in terms of overseas social workers and their experiences here. Now, there is a huge, one of the things, it's about thinking creatively. Having worked with local authorities for so many years, and the retention and the vacancy is so huge. There is a huge cohort of, there are a number of social workers who come on different visas, not, a spouse visa or whatever, but are qualified and are not able to get into, as what Biju said. So I'm just thinking, and one of the key things that Social Work England is also saying is about, if you don't have this, you need to have a practice supervisor who can, support you for 30 hours, and there's an expectation there. So I'm just thinking in terms of how can Social Work England think creatively of working with local authorities, because there's a need, as to whether they can offer some kind of support to this cohort, so that the registration happens quicker, and we are also able to tap in to the huge resource that is left untapped here, because we are going all the way to India and South Africa and Zimbabwe, and there are a number of people here with the same qualification, but may not have that expected Social Work England, the 30 hours, which needs to be signed off. So because you're meeting, I've just made a note here, you have the National Workforce Roundtable and things like that, whether that's a consideration you might want to think about. And I'm happy to speak about that later too. So it's just, how can Social Work England be creative in terms of, helping these social workers who are here not able to get in just because of those, and I agree, it's just not Indian. I'm not speaking about Indian alone. I'm speaking about the whole, is there something that we can think creatively much beyond? And the other thing is the data and how much it can be taken back to the local authorities in terms of EDI. It's a huge issue. The elephant is in the room all the time, and it's not been really addressed. So how much can Social Work England, and I think that's something that I'm working with Ruth Allen and, with BASW to say, what are we guys doing about this? Much more, So just a thought for you, Amina, and maybe we can touch base later too.
I'd really welcome that, Priya. I think quickly on just the two comments that you raised around some of the things that we're doing. We are looking at this around the roundtable. I think some of it is some of it sits with Social Work England, but some of it is broader sector, and quite rightly, as you say, it's about employers. So we are doing work with employers around ensuring that they understand the registration process. And I think, speaking to Biju's comment, that sometimes employment is gained and then there's an expectation that the registration process will potentially be fast-tracked, and that's not how it works. So they're trying to get the information. And again, obviously, for every individual who's got an application, for them, your application is obviously of ultimate importance. But when we're getting the increase in the numbers of applications that we've been able to highlight to you earlier, that then obviously we need to look at that on a fair basis, to look at how we're able to process this, and therefore ensuring that the information is accurate becomes even more important, because it means we can do that more quickly. And then in relation to what you said about the data, we are doing some of that work around how do we make those processes fairer around fitness to practice. But one of the challenges that we have is that a significant number of the referrals that come to Social Work England are actually from members of the public. So it's not from employers. So we're doing targeted work with employers to look at local resolution, and hoping that if people are getting a better response when they raise an issue locally, that's less likely to create a concern for us as the regulator, because again, we ultimately believe that we need to only be dealing with the most serious issues, and any issue that can be dealt locally is better, because we want to see as many social workers in practice as possible. So I think it's really important for us to really recognise that this is definitely something that we need to work on with the sector collectively. But please do contact me outside of this and we'll have more of a chat. But I already link in with Duke on the EDI steering group, and we've talked about the Diaspora group as well. So really keen to support on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amina. Lots of hands up, but I think, there's a really, really interesting point to reflect on. And these are some of the key issues that social workers from outside, minoritized background experience. And I think but I'm also conscious of the time. So I will allow one question. I think Gigi's hand has been up for some time. So Gigi.
Thank you so much.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Yeah, we can.
Sorry, I was saying.
Sorry, Gigi. I'm really conscious of the time. We can have that question another time. We can't hear you what you're saying.
Can you hear me or not?
No, we can't. Sorry.
Can you?
No, we can't.
Can you not hear me?
No, we can't. So I'm going to move on to something else. Okay. I'm so sorry about it. Okay. So I'm really conscious of the time. Is there anyone who is in this country who can ask question? I think Tommy has raised his hand, and if it is going to be difficult, then I'm not, because I don't want the questions to be raised, just because of the logistics of it and the time that we have. Tommy, are you able to raise the question here?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? George, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my question to Amina, because I am supporting so many social workers in this group and outside from India for their supervised practice as a requirement for registration. So I think it is newly introduced. If you have up to 2 years, 30 hours, 2 to 5 years, 60 hours. And also it says, which is discriminatory in some way, if you qualified from a country where social work is not regulated. Previously, if you are qualified from a country where English is your not first language. So 2 conditions, which my view, it is discriminatory. And I would like to know what Social Work England is doing to make that supervised practice easy. I can give an example. Many of the social workers in this group are currently working in children's social care setting, not statutory setting, care homes. But they are part of character assessment review and care and support planning. That can be an excellent example for their supervised practice. But who is there as a qualified and registered social worker to support them? I'm doing that within my own space as a qualified social worker registered. So, Amina, that's a question for you to give an answer now or later, please.
I think that it'd be useful to pick up on more of what you've said in a bit more detail at a later point, but I'm happy to provide a shorter response for now, given the time. I think I appreciate that you've obviously pointed out some of the challenges, and as have others. But ultimately, the reason why we've got the requirements that we have, or which countries are included or not included, are because of actually how they align with our existing expectations. So I think it's where there are courses or regulations which are already similar to what we expect. I think it obviously offers greater confidence that there is that in place. I think the challenges where work isn't regulated, or that there are different definitions around what social work is and how it is practiced, it means that we need greater assurance to be able to say that those people on the register are fit to practice. I think the challenges that we have, that if we're not able to evidence that in a meaningful way, then that isn't what is obviously articulated within our guidance and legislation. So I think there are some complexities around this, and I think this is what Priya was alluding to earlier about, can we think about what
that's
else
fair enough, but the difficulty, quality should not be compromised.
Tommy, can I interrupt? Can Amina respond? And then I want to bring this meeting to a conclusion. Thank you.
I was just going to say that I think it speaks to some of the points that Priya has made, is that the recognition of some of the challenges and looking at how we can collectively maybe look at this to be able to support people to achieve that. But I think ultimately it's about being able to ensure that for us as a regulator, public protection is what we're focused on. So we need to be able to be confident that anybody on the register is fit to practice. But I think, to Priya's point, it feels very important to be able to explore how, as a sector, we can try and make that as smooth as possible, and look at how we can come together. And I know that some of the work that the Diaspora special interest group has been doing, that I've been briefed on by Duke as well, and really keen to explore how we do that together and bring some of these conversations into those wider discussions that we're having at the National Roundtable as well. So as I say, I'm happy to carry this out outside of this group. I don't think some of the challenges that people have raised could ever be resolved in a webinar in the time that we have, but recognise the passion around this, and I don't want to undermine anything that anybody has said, and really recognise the challenges in this. But I think there are lots of opportunities as well, as this webinar is focusing on, and I look forward to capitalising on some of those.
Thank you very much, Amina. That's really, really helpful, and your offer will be very, very much appreciated by the team here. And I think, you know, as I said earlier, I've been in this country for the last 25 years, and I started I came to do my PhD, and then on those days I had to work to support myself, and I was lucky to get a job. And it has been very, very, you know, it has been an interesting journey for that matter at that time. But at the same time, you know, that for your senior leadership to have confidence in you, you know, is important, because you can deliver if you're able to, you know, enlist the confidence of your senior leadership for that matter. But things are moved on, and public protection is an important factor. And if you go into the, you know, that kind of conversation, you would understand why we have a regulatory framework informing our practice, informing education and what. So that's really, really important to have this conversation. And sometimes what happens is that those of us who are outside that kind of, you know, normative framework will be disproportionately impacted by some of these, you know, framework, because it's not because they are not, you know, appreciative of it. It's not easy to sort of understand the nuances of what individual social worker might experience or bring to the board for that matter. And my suggestion here is, like, you know, maybe for this group to organize a different meeting, more like a town hall meeting, you know, where some of this could be just a conversation where we could have, you know, key questions being raised, and how we can really explore some of these things in more detail, so that Amina can then take this back to Social Work England and perhaps work with her counterparts in Scotland. And I have to say, in Scotland, somebody who is wanting to register, you know, become a member of the register, will have to undertake 80 days of supervised placement, not 30 hours or something like that. So I just leave that over there. Anyway, so thank you so much, Amina, for that really, really insightful presentation. I was going to say, let's take 5 minutes break, but I'm not going to do that. But if you want a comfort break, just go and have a comfort break, make a cup of tea and whatnot. So let's go on with the second part of the seminar, which is a really, really interesting presentation by Yohai and Priya on the work they have been doing. I don't know who wants to go first. I leave that to you. I don't know how long would you focus it, say maybe less than 10 minutes, but 5-7 minutes or something like that. I'm so sorry. I'm conscious of the time. It's nearly 12 o'clock now.
We will
Sorry,
run.
can I, just before you start, can I just say I need to go, so I'm going to say goodbye, but thank you for having me. And Priya and Yohai, if you don't mind sharing your presentation in an email, that would be great. And then if we can also catch up afterwards, Priya, I'd really welcome that. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the session and the weekend. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. Am I echoing?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. And I'm not echoing. I'm echoing to myself. I'm going to change something.
There is no echo as far as we are concerned, Yohai. At least I can't hear any echo.
Okay. This, I hope, will work better now. Can you all see the presentation?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, so thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. Maybe I should start by saying thank you to the forum, for the Malayali Social Workers Forum, for initially getting in touch with us, with me, in 2017. It was Tommy who got in touch with me and asked if we would be willing to host your annual meeting, and we were very happy to do that. Myself being a migrating social worker, this is something that I was thinking about for a while, my own experience, and even though I came here as an academic, still the journey wasn't very simple. It wasn't simple. And so I was thinking about it, but to be honest, only during the conference and after that, I sort of, I realized the significance of this issue, and I realized it became clear how I should, as a researcher, respond to what I learned. So I just want to say thank you, because through this experience, I learned a lot, and I think that I sort of reached an area that I find meaningful and interesting. And what I'm going to do later, or you know what, I can very quickly, I will post a link to our research group, which has now been going for quite a few years, since 2018, and we so far had close to 20 students working on different aspects of migration of social workers. So this is again to say thank you to all those involved, many Brunel students who had the opportunity then to publish and so on. I'm going to, you can see the title of our presentation. The context of international social work or international recruitment was slightly, to some extent, presented by Amina. We can say that, that it's not new. social work has been on the shortage occupation list at least for the last 10 years. It's a quick and often a relatively cost-effective solution for governments, because you don't need to invest in training people. They're just there, ready. On the other hand, there is quite a lot of demand in different countries because it's a great way to develop your career and boost your career. So social workers in many countries are looking to migrate, and the UK is a popular destination. And of course, the UK is not the only destination. Amina mentioned some of the data. There are close to 120,000 social workers registered throughout the UK, close to 100,000 in England. Huge or significant rates of jobs that are not occupied, or roles that are not occupied. So there's a huge shortage, ongoing shortage. In terms of the number of social workers who are qualified abroad, figures move between 10 to sometimes even 20%. But if you think about the number of people who originate from abroad, who themselves were migrant, could be before they qualified or much earlier. So the numbers are much, much higher. Amina mentioned the spike, the rise of 175% in the number of applications. And there's a huge spike in Wales. Huge. So these issues were discussed. Some of the issues, some of the difficulties. These are things that we explored through a series of studies. Only few of the issues are raised here, but recognition by UK social work authorities is certainly one of those. We spoke about fitness to practice. These are ongoing issues. So as George mentioned, these are issues that we have seen many years ago. And there are all kinds of very practical issues that diaspora social workers or migrating social workers face: cost of living, cost of accommodation, mentioned racism and discrimination. What I want to say, which I think is an issue, is that the vast majority of research that looked at these issues looked at social workers regardless of where they come from, and so had very little sensitivity to the culture that they were coming from, but also very little sensitivity or sort of attention to the culture social workers were trying to adjust into. And in this case, I'm talking about English culture. So for whatever reason, and I can raise quite a few reasons for that issue, I think that just greater attention to culture would do a lot of good to this effort. Priya, I think I'm going to hand it over to you, but I want to say, before I hand it over to you, is that Well, I'm also Priya's guest because this special interest group that I'm speaking as part of was initiated by Priya and by Duke, and I'm really thankful that they enjoyed and invited me to join them. So thank you, Priya, and over to you. And shall I just tell me when you want me to move to the next slide?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. I'll do that. Thank you for that, Yohai, for setting the scene. So the special interest group, Yohai, can you put kind of put on the next slide before I come to this slide? Can you just put thank you. Yeah. So I just want to, speak about the reality, guys. We know that, we are all here because we were, many of us are recruited, many of us are still looking. And the experiences of all of us have been different. But just to spend 5 minutes, probably, or even 2 minutes, just to think about what are the experience of different social workers now, faced by migrant social workers, because the risk, we all face difficulties, but it's felt differently. And the reality now of people coming, and with the increase, cost of living crisis, this is the reality. Those who've been here are struggling. So those who are coming in, and then the current situation of increased inflation and living cost is putting many workers at it's written poverty here, but at difficulties. So it's not many times we come with a lot of dreams, and we have to acknowledge that it does have an impact on, on many aspects of our life. So one is cost of living. We are having a huge increase in safeguarding of diaspora social workers themselves. So because they're, in terms of childcare, and huge issues like that. Now, in terms of the mental health, coming here, many of us, we may not be used to what the expectation in UK is. And not having the support, and feeling lonely, and lack of support network, and the impact of all that can be huge. And sometimes it can be a very lonely place. So I'm so glad that we have associations like UKMSW and other associations. But the key thing for the special interest group, why we started, is the local authorities who employ us need to understand this in depth, a little more about about the people they are bringing into this country, and their duty of care to these, to us as social workers whom they bring in as a short, to fill that, gap in recruitment. And the secondary trauma that means some of them, some of us face, looking at the abuse and exploitation that's happening here, because we don't realize, oh my God, and maybe that triggers of some memory for us. Again, the support that is given and the understanding that is given to social workers. And racism is there. I'm not, and what are we facing? And I think I'm glad to see Social Work England speak about EDI and the how and all the data, and how that is going to be used to highlight the reality of this huge cohort of social workers who are applying with 176% increase. So I think the special interest group was, began to say, in the international committee, to say, we need you to listen to us, and we need you to support us. Yohai, can you just show slide 5 just quickly? So we formed this to advocate for the voice and interests of diaspora social workers, and to promote best practice standards, and to address the various challenges of diaspora support network. If you can move to slide 7. Yeah, and again, I'm not going to, because of time, the survey is very clearly showing about, how many people are going into, agency work because of not enough money to make ends meet. Second, because of racism, and the anti-racism report that came out last year shows that 25% of social workers have experienced racism, and at least in the last 12 months, and 42% have witnessed workmates facing that. And community care is raising that as a big issue as to why people are moving into agency, and racism is a big issue. So it is the elephant in the room. And how do we as diaspora social workers keep ourselves safe, keep ourselves, and how do we support each other? Because ultimately we need to support each other. So that's another thing that we are, that we have taken up with BASW, and with, and there are, there's a number of work that the special interest group is currently doing, as I think David touched on how we are working with the Department of Health and Social Care in looking at recruitment and code of ethics, and we worked with them in terms of including overseas social workers. We've now, if we can move to the next slide, I'm conscious of the time too. Yeah, so we're doing a number of work in terms of, we worked on a guidance to support social workers, but that was based on the survey that we did. This slide is just showing on the survey that we did, and some of the surveys that's come out recently. Again, we know that 48% of the social workers from diaspora social workers, overseas social workers, are reporting how they are, 48% they are reporting they've been treated badly. 40% is saying support is available but needs improvement. Only 12% of the social workers are saying they're treated well. And our survey that we did, and three things that came out is mentoring, induction, and management support. How much are we getting? So those are the things that has informed the special interest group. Next slide, Yohai. So so there's a lot of work to be done, guys, because this is a huge, huge issue. Now, to work with Social Work England, to work with the Department of Health and Social Care, to work with BASW themselves. We are a BASW special interest group, but we are working with BASW as to saying, what are you doing to help this cohort of social workers here, who are here but not able to get a job, who are here who will get a job but not treated well, who are here but are highly represented in the fitness and practice. You bring them here, and what is it? I think Yohai spoke about how this recruitment has been a long-term thing, and they think they say, okay, you are all trained, and they do give us, that's a small induction package, but it's not good enough, because people come here and realize, oh my God, this is a huge, huge change for us. So what we have done is we have, the BASW special interest group have brought together a guidance. Yohai, can you put the next slide? Okay, which is a guidance for induction standards. This speaks on 6 areas. We are speaking about the recruitment framework, how it needs to be done. How do we think about the well-being and support of, for all local authorities to be thinking culturally, how are they looking into it? How are they, how are they going to make an inclusive induction framework? How are they going to assess those social workers in a fair way? How will they retain them? And how will they, my research is on glass ceiling. That's a huge issue. Still the percentage of Black and Asian leaders are quite significantly low. So how do we improve all this? So these are things that the induction standards that we have put together, and this is actually done by a group of social workers, overseas social workers, and this is endorsed by BASW. And I can say that, my local authority in which I work are using it as a Bible. They've said, Priya, this is really good. We've not had this level of detail, so we will look into this. So next slide, Yohai.
Priya, can you conclude in the next 3 minutes?
Yeah,
please?
this is the last 2 slides. Yeah. So if there's a lot of benefit that that following this induction and guidance will help. I know that all of you all are working for different local authorities, and I know there are managers here. I know there are service managers. I know there are, and this is a really good group of social workers who are here. And I'm not going to go through the benefit of all this, but just for, if in your own way, if you all can, this is about you guys. Okay, this is about a group of diaspora social workers putting together a guidance. So we will send you the link after this. Please, can you ensure that you take it back to your local authority to say, guys, can you, and take it to your principal social worker and ask them to look at it, and ask them, so that people who come here will have the right support, will be treated fairly, and retention can, and you feel, you're not feeling vulnerable while you reach out to vulnerable social workers. Next slide, Yohai. So it's just a quote that, that I use with all local authorities when I present this, to say, when we all labor that uplifts humanity has dignity, the work that we are doing, and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence. Now, that is for, for our managers. It is for us. We are uplifting humanity, and it should be done in an excellent way. And this is something, it's something that we can take for ourselves, as diaspora social workers, how we show them we are a class apart, how we show them we're interested in training, how we show them that we don't lie down and take, rubbish, but at the same time, we feel confident to say, no, this is not the way you treat us, and when you have resources like, what we are bringing out for you all to actually, if you all can take that further, so that local authorities, this is free to them, so that local authorities can actually make use of the work done by diaspora social workers, so that it is, that the experience of us and the local authorities and the vulnerable people here we are working for will be a brilliant one. Thank you.
Thank you, Yohai and Priya, for the really, really interesting presentation and reflection, drawing on your own research. And I'm sure when we sat through that presentation, we all will be saying, talking to ourselves, oh, I have experienced that. I have experienced, it is quite possible that these are part of, this is something that we all experience when we come from a different cultural and regional context, that, because I think, as I said initially, social work is global, but the actual construction of that social work in this country is very much local, and is informed by the local statutes, local legislation and policy framework, and producing a social work workforce that needs to respond to the local context. And when it is driven by the policy and regulatory framework, driven by that kind of mindset and knowledge, it's very difficult to understand that social work exists in different parts of the world, and you could learn lessons from that. And bringing that kind of fusion of knowledge will ultimately create a much more, richer, fulfilling kind of workforce for that matter. And that kind of uplifting, emancipatory kind of senior leadership is yet to be born. I'm sorry to sound very negative in that, but it is a process, and we need to continue to sort of, champion that cause for that matter. And I can tell you from my own experience, it hasn't been an easy journey, okay? And I'm not going to go into any of those things because we don't have much time, but we really need to look at the positives. And for me, I think, something that has really, I've learned to listen to is that, when you cannot change the system from outside, be part of the system. And only through that, you can change that, And talking about the negative experiences will be important. It gives us a sense of emotional, what a catharsis for that matter, but at the same time, it's not going to lead to any change. There's absolutely that sometime, more often than not, we or you, those of us who are deemed as constantly raising these issues as an issue and a complaints will become the troublemakers. So of course, instead trying to sort of work within the system to make the changes. As Gandhi said, you have to become the part of the change process for that matter. So thank you very much to Yohai and Priya for doing the presentation. And one quick sort of reflection. I'm new to any of those things. I lived in a sort of a different world for that matter, having moved away from practice. So I'm not, my question might be very much not reflective of what is going on here. But I'm just wondering whether this group has membership from all these people, or is it possible for the group to open up more, membership to the wider diasporic social work community in the UK? So that is something I want to just leave that with you both. So I want, given the timing is really on, we only have maybe 10 minutes. I'm just going to make an executive decision and add another 5 minutes for that matter, because I really want to give space for people who want to talk about their personal experiences. Okay, I don't know who is there here in the contest. We have Vishal Udaykumar, a social work student in the UK. Araminda George, I believe she has already left. Biju, is that right?
I'm still here, but I don't know whether she wants to leave early. So,
I'm trying to stay as long as possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then,
So we could prioritize her first. Then
okay. Then we have Tommy Sebastian, and Susan Philip, and Somini Joy. So who needs to go first? Is it Araminda?
Yeah.
It's okay if I go first. I promise I'll be less than 30 seconds.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry, George.
Sorry, George. You can unmute your camera.
Yeah. Sorry, George. We've got Gigi as well. Yeah, Gigi is, and I think
you didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, Gigi.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Araminda.
Oh, thank you. So hiya, my name is Araminta. I am an adult social worker, working in the community team. I've worked for around 1.5 years now. So I've managed to go through that ASYE program and have that experience. Unlike many of my other social work colleagues here, I had completed all my studies in the UK, as well as sort of the higher education, university, and then went into the ASYE program. So just to summarise, the two sort of main challenges I wanted to put across to the group was regarding sort of the need for an in-depth induction, especially for people coming from who are qualified social workers from overseas, which takes into account obviously their personal lived experience, their professional experience, and the knowledge that they existingly have, as well as they want to develop. So that is one area that, from speaking to other sort of BME social workers as well, that we've gathered that is an area that is a challenge, and as a result, people are feeling a little bit more anxious and a bit more underprepared when they go into that frontline practice. Secondly, there being a less focus, or what can we say, a bit of less investment into supporting professionals who have already passed their ASYE in taking the next steps towards career progression. So as we know, ASYE program looks at sort of professional development over the year, which is excellent. But after that, what else is there to enable that professional to take that necessary developmental steps towards career progression? So sorry, that was a very whistle-stop tour of sort of my sort of experiences and personal reflection. So thank you.
Thank you, Araminda. That's really helpful. Johnson has raised his hand. Johnson, is that a question or a reflection of some comment that you want to add here?
Just a reflection and just echoing what Araminda was saying. I mean, when Araminda said there is a need for more training, more awareness creation around legal frameworks. That's exactly what I was thinking when I was when Priya was presenting her slides and the slide on induction. So I was kind of thinking, I think maybe we could do more to support newcomers to understand the legal framework, how the legislative frameworks and the statutory framework that underpins social work is operating in the UK. I mean, I suppose, for that matter, any newly qualified social worker would, or kind of, I think they could do it, but not just social workers, qualified abroad, or so. I think that is a require or need across the board, in my view. That's all.
Thanks, Johnson. That's really, really helpful. And I think one thing, I don't know whether it's possible, in my role as head of social work at the University of Edinburgh, what I do is to provide personal mentoring to colleagues who join over and above what is required of me, and that I don't know whether it's been helpful or not, because I was remembering my experience when I joined here as a social worker, the support that I got from some of my colleagues, which I call invisible support. It's not written in any way for that matter. And having somebody to hold your hand to walk through that kind of journey. And I was just wondering whether within this diasporic group, whether some kind of mentoring support could be made available, and you can create perhaps a link articulating what is available, and then some of us providing our expertise to people who are coming here on a voluntary basis. That would be one way to address some of these things, because if you want for the system, the structures to make the changes, it will take time. If at all it has to lead to something positive, and more often than not, it will fall on deaf ears for that matter. So that's a suggestion. I am not asking you to do anything. Maybe think about it. Thank you very much, Armin. I know you had to go, but thank you really. That was very helpful. Can I move on to the next speaker, please, Vishal? You there or not?
Hi.
Hi.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you for this opportunity, UKMSW Forum, in this national workshop. My name is Vishal Kumar. I am I'm pursuing MSc Social Work at Brunel University, London. I would like to reflect on my experience as a social work student in the UK. So I would like to categorize my reflections into three parts, which are the opportunities, the challenges, and the way forward, which I felt. So if I look into the opportunities, like we need to commit to developing all aspects of curiosity, intellect, emotional intelligence, etc., to practice as a social worker. Social work education is the initial stage of never-ending learning on human life and experience. So while having a discussion with various social work students who came from overseas to pursue their social work education here in the UK, the feedback seems to be exciting, including mine. There is a common agreement on the opportunity for social work knowledge and practice skills due to the studies in the UK. Some have often mentioned to me that they have received immense opportunity of learning, which was even beyond their expectation. In comparison to where I am coming from, which is India, this opportunity is aspirational and futuristic. Here we can observe a practice-oriented learning process, which is actually challenging for a student who hasn't been engaged with the UK social setting. However, the outcome seems to be optimistic. The study and practice grounded on theory is an enlightening aspect because these theoretical frameworks helps a student to identify possibilities and risk while working with a service user in the practice setting. So as a student, I would like to mention about the practice of reflection during my studies. The aspect of reflection is a method to realize who we are and what we did. It helps us to repair our gaps and to move forward in the social work practice. This is an opportunity that a student receives during a prolonged period of study in order to equip oneself with the practice. This is the crisp of and the crux of the opportunities that I would like to share with you. And coming to the challenges, starting from the admission process. Currently, an overview of social work education in the UK is unavailable to the overseas students before the admission process, while considering other management and engineering courses in the UK universities. The cost of the social work master's course, looking at master's course, is higher when compared to other university courses in other departments from an international student's perspective. International students must secure a UK student visa to start their social work studies here too. So the lack of an adequate network of support before admission or during the initial period creates a confusion for the students regarding social work studies, as well as their professional expectations and standards. For example, recently there was a case where a student was confused of the fee. How much is the fee that she is supposed to pay? The fee was double, but unfortunately she thought that the fees is half. So she was actually confused by the education consultancy. So I was able to create a social.
Vishal, can you conclude it in the next 1 minute, please? So sorry, because I'm conscious of the time.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the practice placement is something which, as a challenge, I would like to mention. So the practice supervisor and practice educators approach has an influence on the student's vulnerability as well as aspiration in the practice in the placement. So this is something which need to be looked into. If there is there's a space where the student can express and self-reflect as well as an opportunity for self-care and a space to share and reflect on the challenges, that would be great for the student to pursue the career. I would quickly go to the way forward. I think that would be important to share. A peer group support within the university social work divisions for students to open up their concerns anonymously and to seek guidance in order to find solutions is something we should look forward. An opportunity for financial support through bursaries that can be applicable to even international students would be helpful. An inclusive and culturally sensitive academic and placement setting would be helpful. Then explore the perceptions of social work practice through the prism of students, which is a better way of reflecting on better practice in the future beyond their registration after the course. A stipend or minimum wage during the placement period is an important point to consider by the regulatory bodies as well as statutory and non-statutory social work, student placement agencies. Because, quote unquote, I must reiterate the point that macro and microeconomic distress does affect the students, the social work students. An extensive research on experience of social work students from BME backgrounds to address their concern and aspirations is the need of the hour here. So I would like to complete my reflection by a quote by a recent study, which states that to maximize students' success, increased support for students must consider the intersections between study and life circumstances, acknowledging the structural underpinnings of the stress that students experience. And I would also like to thank my beloved lecturers and professors who are consistently pushing me forward and helping me in the process of resilience. Thank you so much, even though the time was short.
Thank you, Vishal. That's really, really helpful to hear from your perspective as a student. What are some of the challenges and opportunities, and how we need to listen to you to really develop and inform the way forward. So thank you very much, and I hope the forum can take on some of the reflections that you have shared with us to to devise the way forward for that matter. So the next speaker, it is already 12:30, and I can't, unless I use brutal force, I cannot control people. So I'm requesting everybody to really use maybe 2 minutes to reflect share your personal experiences. And it is an important forum as well. So I'm going to ask next speaker, Tommy Sebastian, service manager, to really reflect on. Please don't take more than maybe 2 to 3 minutes. Tommy.
Tommy Sebastian left.
Oh, he's left. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. The next is Susan Phillip, lecturer, Northampton University.
Okay. Hello. Thank you for giving the opportunity. I'm quite conscious of the time as well, so don't worry, I won't take more than 2 minutes. Okay. I understand that we have discussed the challenges here, which we are facing as a kind of, joining as a new social worker and also studying here. But I just want to enlighten the opportunities as well here. Okay. So I joined with the local authority in 2015, and currently I'm working as a senior lecturer, and I worked as a senior management level as well. So if anyone is looking forward to work as a social worker or kind of, trying to progress their career, the suggestion is that definitely please don't stuck where you are. Please try to come out of your comfort zone, do the reading, do the research, and also if you want to take a career, try to look into the job specification you want to do it, and try to develop your personal skills, experience and learning according to the job specification which you want to take up next, and prepare for it and attend interview. Okay, so what I would suggest is, as we Malayalis, we have great resilience. Okay, the only thing is we need to be aware of the language we use here. That shouldn't indicate power imbalance, and we need to prepare thorough enough. So please move on, take the spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That's really important, and also sharing your experience and extending your invitation to be a beacon of hope and support. Thank you. The next person is Somini Joy, Senior Social Worker, Children's Services, UK.
Hi, am I audible?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm very much aware of the time limit, so I won't go more than 3 minutes, I would assume. I am very much, Biju was asking me to reflect on the social work journey, the challenges and opportunities and all that. I'm not going into any details. I think most of you are kind of covered all that areas. The only thing I want to emphasize is my observation and learning about the international social workers. My view is that any international social workers who come to the country to practice as a social worker, they need to be treated as a ASYE, like how you support the first assisted year of practice. It's, I remember about my social work journey. I was so fortunate to have some of the members who are part of in this platform itself, Gigi and Tommy Sebastian and Priya and so many people, they supported me. I had a really kind of ground before I step into the social work journey. I'm really fortunate to have that support. But most of the international social workers, they are straight coming to practice. And I remember my journey going to a Section 47 investigation with regards to concerns around FGM, female genital mutilation. All I knew at that time is what that stands for. I didn't have any detailed knowledge into that kind of. So that's why my observation is that any international social workers, they need to have that properly practice a supported way of stepping into that journey. Now I am practice supervising university students, and my request to my all senior managers is that they need to be given the opportunity to shadow as much as practice the social workers are doing. The home visit, the telephone conversation, how they consider an initial referral, they need to have that practice support. It's not about you giving an induction package to a student. It's about giving that opportunity to shadow. That's how they develop their journey to social work. Thank you if I sorry if I'm exceeded the time limit, but I thought I would just reflect on my observation. Thank you.
Thank you so many. Thank you very much for that. I got a couple more people. Limina George.
Dr. George, she will be joining a little late.
Hi.
Oh, okay, she's here.
Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'm at my workplace. That's why. Okay, thank you for the opportunity, first of all. And as an overseas qualified social worker, I face a little bit challenges over here for finding jobs actually and registering with Social Work England. Mainly, I think it has been already pointed out in this session before by someone. First, I have put 4 points with me. And first one is time scale, which means the duration of the registration process, and each step, the duration. I feel it is bit congested, like it's not enough for me. It's my reflection only. And the second one is making evidence for registration. It's really hard. I have qualified from India, and I felt it's really hard to make so and so evidences, these hours, the statements, certificates, everything. I felt really hard. And if there is anything like any other alternate options, it will be really grateful for us, like who are planning or ongoing process with the registration on England. And I have heard that I feel myself confused one time. I've heard that I was a student here. I've completed a course here in UK. So I heard that while doing my registration process, the student or the one who is completed a course or any graduation process, graduation courses from here in UK, they don't want to fulfill or clear the IELTS. Even that all things, it is not like that. Even the guidelines of registration, it is not like that. And I have to go back to so many people, so many that who have already completed the registration. It's actually a bit confusing. Someone is saying like there is no need to clearing IELTS. Someone is telling like there is a need. It is really mandatory for the social work registration. So it's a little bit confusing. And even I'm working on adult care, and regarding to the supervisional practice, someone was already mentioned it, I think. I heard that the supervisional practice, adult care will be considering in supervisional practice, but it is not now. It's my only query that it's also a part of social care, or we are also working with people having even all the different labels, mental problems, what adult care, children, and these kind of services. Why it can't be in part of the supervisional practice of, or is there any provision, or is there any alternative for this supervisional practice? Because I struggled a lot to get in these all things. So, and even finding a job, seeking a job. I have a friend, and she has been already registered in Social Work England, and it's been 2 years. She is renewing, but she is not yet in social work job. So actually, overseas qualified like me people are really struggling to get registered and really seeking for a job, and getting into that social work job is really hard for us. Thank you a lot for this opportunity. Actually, there is a time limit, I know. Thank you so much. I have a lot to say, but thank you.
Thank you, Limina. That's really, really helpful. And, it's important that personal stories become the evidence base. Okay. And people have to hear that. And I'm grateful that you managed to find time to share that. I thought it's a Saturday, but I'm surprised to see you are working. So I don't know what context you're working or anything like that. I thought Monday to Friday is a sort of normal working contract that we have, but that's a different conversation. There is one more person, Gigi Joseph.
I hope this time you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
2 minutes, please.
Yeah, I will try to minimize as much as I can possible. I was qualified in 1998. I was doing more development side of the work in childline, in children's services and development sector in Delhi, because I was qualified in Pune in 1998 and moved to Delhi, and working in childline, developing in a banking project. I was also associated with lots of international projects, including UN, United Nations projects, and Save the Children Alliance, etc. So that has given me an insight and an aspiration to work internationally and work in UN as well. So there was an opportunity for me to come through the project to attend an international conference in the United Kingdom, and I came in 2002. I went back after the conference. I had I came back to explore employment in UK. And there was hardly few social workers, or I couldn't name any social workers properly to get guidance, so what to do. So I was here, and one of my cousin was here, so I stayed with him and started exploring. I had 3 months of visa. So I started looking for employment, and obviously it had been very hard. So it was the time of Victoria Climbié, the investigations and everything. So I went and attended an interview there. So it was not successful. So I did look for an employment in the residential sector. So I successfully, I was successful in an interview there. So I started my career in a residential setting, and then got married, and my wife moved, and she was also a social worker. And then after a year, it's been very hard to get into statutory sector. So the things we talked in today, since the diversity and the ethnicity and all those struggle, I found to move to London to get a job. So I moved to Slough because it's more, diverse and, ethnically, and they're giving international social workers opportunities. And I was successful there. I started working there. Because we need to have work permit at the time as well. So I've stayed in Slough for 5 years during my work permit period. So I worked across different teams. I also enrolled for post-qualification in childcare, post-qualification childcare and 1 and 2. It's been always challenging because of the legislative gap, the transformations and the challenges, the language barriers, cultural sensitivity, working with the different families, etc. But obviously I stayed and worked very hard and, also worked, like late night and, so working 24/7, so to improve your practice and challenges, because I always found you have vulnerability. I was not going to give up, because obviously, you wanted to work hard and do well. I was focused on my career pathways and put forward and, grabbed all the opportunities and etc. And in so I got my indefinite leave in 2009. So I also recognized I wanted to contribute. So and recognize there was no lack of social workers, international social workers opportunity. I want to use that skill.
Can you conclude it, please? Because we are nearly.
So that is how I started my social work recruitment consultancy and include so many people like that being recruited in that way and supported them to get into the social work journey. I'm currently working as a consultant manager and also helping mentoring, coaching, and social workers. And I'm glad to see that I'm also one of the founding members. Started the UK Social Workers Forum and been the co-chair. The reason we started the forum is because of lots of social workers, international social workers, being disproportionately being disciplined, including the social workers I recruited. Majority of them gone through disciplinary process, and I was interested to see the point made by the Social Work England and Diaspora social workers, and also the findings of the Diaspora's work highlight the similar pattern and interest. So I found in 2009 and 2010, and this journey continued to be growing, and I think even looking the disciplinary process. Hearing in the Social Work England, highlighting the Black and ethnic social workers, been high number being involved, and being a manager involved in disciplinary process. It is lack of support, not necessarily the performance issue. Just because of everything has been highlighted today, is talking about lack of understanding and awareness, and including the senior managers, leadership has very little awareness of the culture and diversity. As Dr. George said about people seeing that as a liability rather than seeing that as a strength, so it is what needed to happen is there is also lots of things we have to adapt, because we come to this country, we have to adapt. It is more individualized work. We have to prepare ourselves to the challenge, but at the same time, there is lots of opportunities to grow, but you have to take personal responsibility and you have to be accountable to develop your career alongside. But I'm glad that we got this forum. We've come a long way as a forum. We are getting more people involved, and we're getting international, partnership to grow our forum in order to mentor and support and, benefit. And I think it is not the number, small number. It is our attitude and, creativity to move things forward and influence in Social Work England. And I'm glad Priya is involved in Diaspora Social Workers Forum, and professors like George is involved, so we could work together to make more partnership working with other organizations to strengthen practice model. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Gigi. That's really helpful. And, we all have a story to tell about our trajectory, our life here. And I think it was a meaningful day that we came together. I know a lot goes behind the scene to organize an event like this. So thank you so much to the organizers and the executive committee that put this seminar together. And it was a really, really interesting, reflective conversation that we had. And also the input from both David as well as Amina. In many respects, portray importance of social work in the global context. That there is a space for what happens locally in the broader global context and vice versa as well, and there is a inextricable link between local and global. And it's important to sort of generate that great awareness of what you and I as individuals can contribute to making the practice a much more meaningful and important sort of consideration, informed by that evidence base. And perhaps I am one of the, I don't know how long you have been here as practitioners. As I said, I came in 1998 through my PhD, and then I had to, I had to find a job to work. And in those days, there was none of these were in place. And if you apply to any of the local authorities, you will, if you are lucky, you will get a rejection letter, or you might just get a nothing at all. And thank you. It has been a journey, and I'm not going to the details of it, but I remember my manager in Glasgow City Council told me, I used to take time off to go for my PhD supervision, and but I also was carrying a very, very high caseload of some 37 cases at a given time, and doing a full-time PhD as well. So it has been a really interesting experience. And so my immediate line manager went and told my area manager that, look, George is doing all these things. Can he just go for his supervision without having to take time off? And so he called me in, and so we had this conversation. So initially I was really anxious as to what is going to happen. And he said, George, you're doing all those things. Just go for your supervision. Don't take time off or anything like that. Just tell your line manager, who is a senior social worker, right? Someone called Louis, and that you're going. Don't even, in those days, you need to sort of write on the board where you are when you go out, don't even say that. Just tell your line manager, okay? So if she's not there, leave a note for me, and that's enough. Go, make sure that you take the afternoon, okay? So then you can just go home afterwards, and that's what. So I had a really, really encouraging area manager. So I left that one to come to Edinburgh, because I was commuting from Edinburgh to Glasgow for my work and study. And then my immediate line manager asked me, is there such a PhD in social work? So entirely different work culture, and even before I could go to my office, there were files on my desk, okay? So you have different kind of work culture, and how do you sort of navigate these kind of contexts to make sure that you can continue to do well, regardless of the structural barriers that are put in place. And it is a process, it is a struggle, it is a fight. And the more evidence you have in terms of informing the senior leadership, be it in the policy, be it in the practice, be it in academia, about some of these issues, individual stories, when put together with others, become the evidence base, okay? So it's important that the work that, Priya and Yohai are doing, along with this, the forum, is really, really useful in shining a light on the challenges that minoritized social workers face, as well as the enormous contribution that we can make to the everyday life of individuals, families, and communities in the UK. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. We can talk a lot about it, but I'm very conscious of the time. But two things I want to repeat. One is that, organize a town hall kind of meeting where you can invite people like Amina, as well as other people, and maybe extend the invitation to the different social work regulatory bodies within the United Kingdom, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. And then maybe invite some senior managers from some of the local authorities, and then where you can talk about some of the unique challenges and barriers that people face. And that's one way, and also BASW for that matter. That's one suggestion I have. The other thing is to create a kind of peer mentoring system, care of this UK, social work forum for that matter, and all of us offering to become a volunteer. And I'm happy to do in my own. I have a busy time. I'm sure you also have a busy schedule for that matter. But within my limited time, I'm happy to support. And I'm also going to nominate somebody here who will kill me for saying this, Johnson Koikara, who happens to be my classmate. She is sitting here. hidden behind the camera, so he'll also be happy to do that as well. So thank you ever so much for giving me this opportunity. And I think someone is going to say a vote of thanks. I think it's Biju or Sheena, I don't know. So I leave that to you. Thank you.
Yeah. So that it's me, Dr. George. So yeah, it's not going to be. I know it was a long day compared to being a Saturday. It's always more than an hour is a long day, because most of other days we are all working. So first and foremost, I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking your time and coming and joining this day. So I know it's a great privilege for UKMSW Forum moving forward from a kind of a professional group, now trying to network with other organizations, groups, forums, like-minded professional bodies to lift the cause of BAME social workers. That's the reason why we choose the subject and the opportunities and challenges for BAME social workers in the UK. So it's the first of our national webinar, and we are planning to have more in the coming days. And as you know, with any national seminars of this caliber, this nature, we need very specialist resource persons or speakers. So I'm very delighted that whenever we had a wonderful panel headed by Dr. George. Sorry, Dr. George, I'm just using your surname as such, because in our culture,
George, my students call me George, and that's the best.
No, in our culture, it's more about Dr. George, not Dr. Palattiyil. So that's the reason I wanted to bring that cultural spirit.
Call me George.
Yeah. So I approached him, and he was very willingly, accepted it, and he wanted to be part of the forum, and he wanted to be part of the seminar. So based on which, then I could develop into a kind of a platform. So for him, and as well as Dr. David Jones, he was one of our previous speakers in a couple of years ago, I think. And then Amina, when I approached her, she was also very willingly, accepted our invitation and able to join us today. And our friend, Dr. Hook, he's always, he reminded me, because I approached him very formally when I sent him the invitation, thinking that, I would approach him in that sense. But then he's politely corrected me, saying that, do you know the connections that I have with the UKMSW Forum? And I said, I knew, but, as a formal invitation, I had to do this way. So I know he's part and parcel of a forum since 2017 and worked very closely with us. And again, our member, though Priya is co-chair of the, a member of the International Committee of BASW and co-chair of the Special Interest Group. I always wanted to connect Priya as our member rather than anything else. And she was she was able to join us today and explain the work they're doing. So it's not about duplicating the work that we do as an organization, but how we can work together to develop that platform where we can discuss the challenges that we face, the opportunities that it offers. We'll be definitely looking forward to working with the BASW in this matter and all other like-minded organizations as well. So thank you very much for all the specialist panel members for joining us today and contributing and committing to the cause. Secondly, I would like to thank all the representatives that joined us today from various social work forums and groups and professional bodies. As I said, creating a platform is our vision. So we'll continue to do that. So without your participation, that won't be possible. So thank you for joining us today, and hope you had a productive day. I would also like to thank the UKMSW Forum, the members who joined us. And last but not least, the committee, executive committee, putting that faith in and joining together and supporting to put an event like this together. So once again, thank you everyone for your wholehearted support, contribution, and commitment to the cause. And we are looking forward to having it more often. Definitely your suggestion, Dr. George, putting a marketplace, that would be something that we will be working with closely with the BASW as well, because we need a participation from other groups like us to be on this platform so that we can have that kind of meaningful conversation taken forward. So once and for all, thank you very much for this long day being with us and contributing. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can I request all the members to stay back for a few minutes?